Well, we're at 6:01, so I think we can go ahead and get started then. Um, I'll kick us off and welcome you all here. My name is Nick Russo, Senior Transportation Planner at the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. We're here in person at the Berkshire Innovation Center, and we're also streaming simultaneously on Zoom webinar, which we are recording. So any audio or voices will be picked up and recorded for future playback on our website. So just for everyone to have a heads up on that. We are, people can come and go out of the door until about 6:30. If you need to leave after that, just know it'll be locked once you leave. You have to knock really hard, maybe somebody will hear you, we'll let you back in, but just as a heads up, if you need to leave between now and 6:30 is okay, but after that, you'll probably get locked out. So we'll settle in, and I'll get us started here with just kind of a quick, here's our agenda, with our agenda for tonight. We'll start with a welcome and introductions. We'll get into the background of the SS4A and the need for a safety action plan here in Berkshire County. After that, we'll review the high injury network and risk-based analysis that helped inform the action plan development. Then we'll share the project policy recommendations that resulted from the study process this past year. And open it up, of course, for any questions and answers, ideas and input you might have about the draft. And the draft's only been out for a couple days, so I don't expect anyone to have read through it at this point. We do have a hard copy. Please read through it, of course. Yeah, cover to cover. We do have a hard copy here if you want to thumb through it. It's available in PDF form on our webpage. And we can also email it out as well. Yep. So we'll continue with our introductions. As I said, my name is Nick Russo, Senior Transportation Planner, BRPC, and the project manager on our end. Also welcoming here with us from Beta Group Inc., our technical consultant, is Jeff Max Tudis, the project manager from Beta, and Anna Sangri, who helped with the high injury network and safety data review. And Austin, who is not here with us, was also a partner with Beta Group to help develop the data review for the action plan. So we'll start out with, for those who might not be familiar with the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. The goal of the program is to reduce and eliminate serious injuries and deaths on our nation's streets, roads, and highways. It's a grant program administered through the United States Department of Transportation. And it provides grants to local, regional, and tribal communities as part of a systematic approach to prevent deaths and injuries on our roadways. As you can see kind of on all the blue blotches on the map there, pretty much all jurisdictions in Massachusetts have been awarded a grant in some form or another, either an implementation grant or a planning grant. And these can be individual cities, counties, or regional planning authorities like BRPC. And we're proud to be playing a part in this plan and being one of the spots on the map here. So we are doing a planning study under this grant. There are two types of grants under the SS4A, planning and implementation. This is currently we're nearing the end of the planning process. The funding range for this is anywhere from 100,000 to 10 million. We had approximately $250,000 awarded to Berkshire County to conduct this plan. And that opens the door for future implementation funding to actually enact projects that are recommended under this plan. And those can range anywhere from 2.5 million to $25 million, depending on the size of the awardee and the types of projects that are proposed. So that's our next hope is our next step is to apply for these funds once the project is complete. As I mentioned, the planning grants are used to develop and carry out a comprehensive safety action plan, and the implementation grants implement the strategies or projects that are recommended in that action plan. So I'll get in now to kind of why we feel the need for this action plan, what the challenge that we're facing in Berkshire County and across the United States. For some context, in 2021, almost 43,000 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes across the United States, of which 7,300 were walking, and millions more were injured, sometimes permanently, each year. In terms of how the United States compares to other parts of the world, especially in developed countries like in the EU, you can kind of tell from hopefully from the dotted line it's a little bit, the graphic is a little bit stretched in the projector. Hopefully it looks okay online, but the kind of the jumble of blue lines and the dotted line in the middle are the EU countries and their average over 2021. And the solid line is the United States in terms of traffic fatalities per million inhabitants. And so we were tracking in reducing the fatalities up until about 2010, and then we started to break away from the trends that the EU was seeing, and now we are pulling away and are by far the highest rate of fatalities per million inhabitants, so about 129 compared to the EU of about 47 per million inhabitants. So we want to reverse this trend. We see it's possible with our other peer countries around the world, so we know that we can make some changes. And the Safe Streets Roads for All grant is here to help start pushing those changes forward. But bring it back home locally in Berkshire County, we're kind of seeing a similar pattern. The 5-year trends that we track over time as part of our work with the FHWA and MassDOT show that we've seen an increase over 5-year cycles since about 2017. Year over year, the trend has been increasing slightly. And these are 5-year averages, so we know that it's not just a one-time blip. It's consistently been increasing for both injuries, serious injuries and fatalities. And so we want to address and reverse this trend. And in terms of vulnerable road users, bicyclists, pedestrians, we've kind of been fluctuating anywhere from an average of 9 to 11 fatalities per year in Berkshire County. So we want to start to see that trend declining rather than sort of just fluctuating in place. So what are we doing about it? We're adopting the safe system approach through the safety action plan. A safe system looks at our transportation system from more angles than just people and their vehicles and behaviors. The guiding principles that inform the safe system are that any deaths or serious injuries on our roads are unacceptable. And if they're occurring, we know there's more work that needs to be done. We know that humans make mistakes, and that's always going to happen. We can't possibly legislate or enforce all mistakes to be, eliminated from our transportation system. We know responsibility is shared, not just between other travelers, but between the people who design, who legislate, who enforce, and plan our roadway systems. So we all need to take a part in reducing these numbers. We know that safety is proactive, that we should try and look forward and prevent crashes from happening before they occur, based on what we know from the past. And redundancy in the system is crucial. I saw a good model the other day. It's called the Swiss cheese model, where basically if you have slices of Swiss cheese and they all have the same holes in them, like things will fall through because something always has a hole in it. Nothing's perfect. Nothing's a silver bullet. But if you have redundant systems that each might have a different flaw, but each have different strengths, you can try and stop that, trend from happening all the way through before a fatality takes place. So redundancy in our systems in terms of education, enforcement, engineering can all help to reduce fatalities from each of their strengths. And so from this, we're crafting our action plan here in Berkshire County. As a recipient of the action plan grant, we're developing this for all of Berkshire County. And the plan will consider projects and programs that address each of the 5 pieces of the safe system approach, which includes safer roads, safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer people, and post-crash care for if crashes do occur. Projects and programs that are recommended in the action plan address one of these 5 characteristics. And you can see those broken out in the recommendations chapter. So this is kind of branded under the umbrella of what I call the STEPS initiative, the Safe Travel and Equity Plan for our streets. And this is kind of a living process that'll go just beyond this action plan. We'll have the implementation plan after to fund these recommendations. We'll have continuous public outreach to keep people informed of what we're doing, opportunities to participate and get educated, and bring more practitioners from towns, from DPWs, from police departments, from first responders, kind of keep them all involved in this process to work towards the same goal of eliminating fatalities and injuries. Our goal is to reach 0, which is sometimes called Vision 0. You'll see from some communities. We're adopting that language as well, because our vision is to reach 0 fatalities. We want to make sure we focus resources equitably to communities who stand to benefit the most from reducing casualties, especially historically underserved communities and those who are some that's underrepresented. And our goal right now is for early 2025 to publish the final action plan and continue tracking the safety statistics in the years ahead and apply for the implementation grants down the road. So I thought this was interesting. We all kind of see what's happening on our roads. We all know that there's something that needs to be fixed. I was just scrolling Facebook and I saw that a local police department had shared, they had new statistics for their traffic crash responses in a particular month. And just unprompted, people commented on that post about what they've seen on the roads in the Berkshires and how they feel unsafe. They've seen increases in crashes, speeding, passing school buses, unsafe driving behavior, feeling unsafe on their bicycles or walking. So I think we all have this shared understanding that our roads can feel unwelcome and dangerous. So through the Berkshire Steps initiative, the goal is to kind of bring all different perspectives in and bring us forward towards making our roads safer for everyone. And we have the tools to do that. We know we can create safer streets by design. While we want to make sure that bad driving behaviors and unsafe behaviors are enforced and reduced, we only know that can do so much. A lot of small towns maybe only have 1 or 2 people in the police force. We can't expect them to be out 24/7 on the roads, trying to stop everyone. So creating streets that are self-enforcing through design will help everyone, including first responders, do their job better. Some of the tools to help us do that include MassDOT's Separated Bike Lane Design Guide, which is a great standard that is used around the country. The latest update to the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is a federal document, and some guides to help with small town and rural designs as well, because it's not just urban areas that can stand to benefit from these. And so what does that look like? It can be a lot of different things. It can be upgraded pedestrian cross signals to make them accessible for people with different abilities and disabilities. It can be better maintenance of our roads, especially in the wintertime, keeping them clear of ice and snow. It can be further implementing and connecting our bike network through either trails like the Asheville Cook Rail Trail, high quality bike lanes, side paths, and better intersection controls. Sometimes roundabouts, sometimes improved traffic signals and timing. Sometimes simplifying the intersection more. So those can all be tools in our toolbox to help reduce fatalities and injuries in Berkshire County. We know we need to close sidewalk gaps to help make walking more appetizing for people to get around. Traffic calming, slowing speeds naturally is also an important tool. And access management, where driveways and curb cuts are placed on roads, can also affect how people travel and reduce complexity and conflicts at intersections as well. So we're starting here at step 1 is our comprehensive safety action plan. We'll get into sort of the details of the plan coming up next. We'll talk about how we created the high injury network, which really shows where we want to focus the resources for the SS4A project around Berkshire County. And from there, we have our project and program recommendations that will inform future grant applications and just activities in general around Berkshire County through BRPC and other entities as well. You'll see our countermeasures toolbox, which is basically how we can choose different actions to take based on types of crashes we see, whether they involve pedestrians, cyclists, if they involve angle crashes at intersections, run off the road crashes, side swipes. There's different countermeasures that can be taken to address those types of crashes. And those will all be recommended depending on the type of situation at the high injury network. So I think I'll hand it over now to Jeff from Beta Group to give us an overview of the high injury network. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Good evening. Jeff Maxiditis from Beta Group. As Nick said, I'm going to talk a little bit about methodology and some of the findings on how we identified the high crashes in the region. So Nick showed us the overarching goal is improve safety by significantly reducing, eliminating roadway fatalities and serious injuries. So The important thing to keep in mind is this includes all roadway users. So, if people are walking or biking or driving, and all travel modes either, and with a special emphasis on those vulnerable users who are outside of their vehicles. So what we did is identified hazardous locations and trends, and we did this a couple ways. I'll talk to you more about this in a minute. We looked at historical trends, and we looked at a predictive analysis of where crashes may occur in the future. And we looked at specific locations like intersections, network-wide corridors, and we developed what we call countermeasures, which are really safety improvements. And Nick talked a little bit about some of those, and Ann will get into those later. So what we did is identify where are crashes occurring now. So that's what we call our trends-based analysis based on crash data, crash reports that's available from Massachusetts DOT. It's called the Impact Portal. That's online. People can look at that, but that's a good clearinghouse of data, which has been developed over the last few years for the entire state. So that's where we developed the historic crash data. And where a crash is likely to occur in the future. So that's we call it risk-based. We developed a predictive model based on different characteristics where a crash is likely to occur in the future. And then we prioritize those locations, both intersections and corridors, into what we call our high injury network. So once we get our projects list identified, we score and rank those projects. We have a system for doing that. And if you look on the bottom, we have a scoring system. Vulnerable users, which are pedestrians, bicycles, maintenance workers, really anybody outside of the vehicle, of 1.5 points per crash or per person. And non-serious injuries, 1 point. Serious injuries are 5 points, and then a fatal crash is 15 points. We also have to include what we call environmental justice score. So those populations which are disadvantaged in the area. So we have a factor of 1.5, and then public input. This is what we call like our local concerns factor. So we talk with people, meetings, input on the dashboard, talk with towns. If there was a particular concern of a location that was identified, we had an additional 1.25 factor for that. So that was the initial scoring that we did to come up with a ranking of the project. So this is what it looks like. It's a little hard to read, but this is the trends-based analysis, the existing crash data. And this on the right shows the entire region, and then the blow up on the left is in Pittsfield. And where you see red, deeper red color is higher severity. And there are a number of crashes, serious injury crashes that were identified in Pittsfield. And the injury risk-based injury network is the predictive or future. This case it's blue, so darker blue again in Pittsfield. But this is looking at things like what characteristics or attributes would make up something in the future that may occur. So things like traffic volumes, roadway widths, lanes, geometries of intersections and roadways. So those are things that come up high when you're looking at contributing factors to crashes in the future. So we combine both the trends-based and risk-based into our high injury network. It looks like this. So then we developed projects based on that for intersections and roadways. And where we saw a corridor that had several intersections that were of concern, we combined that into one project. So you'll see a lot of corridor projects identified as part of this plan as being high crash locations, but maybe made up of several intersections. So we came up with what we call the top 50 regional projects. So these are the projects rated the highest in terms of serious injury or fatal crashes based on that scoring system. The yellow shows intersections or corridors within the study area. In addition to those regional top locations, we also identified projects for each community in the Berkshires. And if you see that teal color, the teal color is those projects. So while the regional projects are obviously important, it's important for each community to identify what those high crash locations are. So we also had that information. So this is what it boils down to, and this just shows our top 10 locations. It shows our score, shows the location, shows preliminary countermeasures, those improvements. There's a blow up of this in the back. If you want to, after the presentation, we can talk about that. There's also handouts where we have all 50 locations shown in those handouts, and it's in the report and it's online, as Nick had said. But so those are the high injury crash networks as we scored and prioritized those for the project. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Anna to tell us about what some of the crash data means and some of the trends and over representations we saw from the data. Anna?
I'm Anna Singer. I'm working on this project also. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the overrepresentation analysis. So this is essentially looking at what types of crashes are we seeing more represented in fatal and serious injuries as opposed to all crashes. Here you can see two pie charts next to each other. One of them shows all crashes, the other one shows serious and fatal crashes. So you can see if the pie slice on the right is larger, it means that it's overrepresented in terms of serious and fatal injuries. So you can see that kind of darker brown color. You can see is 2% in all crashes and 20% in serious and fatal crashes. Those are people walking and biking. I guess it got cut off, yeah. But that's an important note throughout this report. It's just people walking and biking are typically really overrepresented. They make up a small amount of crashes, but a large amount of the serious and fatal crashes. You can also see head-on crashes make up a larger percentage of those serious and fatal crashes, as well as single vehicle crashes make up a larger percentage. This one again, the pie chart on the left shows all crashes, the pie chart on the right shows the serious and fatal crashes. So when looking at the vulnerable user crashes, these are people walking and biking. People walking are overrepresented when you look at the serious and fatal, so it's a more dangerous crash type. These are the crash types by community. So you're seeing a lot of these words. Angle crash means when you hit an angle, typically seen at intersections where people are turning. Side swipe is where you hit on the side. Head on. I think the other ones are a bit more self-explanatory. But here you can see in the more dense communities, there's a wide variety of crash types. As the communities get less dense, you see a lot more of that green, the single vehicle crashes. This is crashes typically into things like trees or poles or deer. And these, this shows communities with over 300 crashes. These are communities that have fewer crashes. Again, you see a lot more green, a lot more single vehicle crashes. So rural communities, the priority is really those single vehicle crashes. These are often people running off the road or hitting fixed objects. So by community, single vehicle crashes are overrepresented, like I said, in rural communities, so pretty much everywhere except Great Barrington, Lennox, North Adams, and Pittsfield. Sheffield's overrepresented, has 5 fatal crashes between 2018 and 2022. Pittsfield is overrepresented in terms of angle crashes, rear end, and non-motorist crashes. And other places with overrepresented non-motorist crashes, people walking and biking, Clarksburg, Dalton, Tennisfield, you can see the list. Some other facts, 42% of total crashes versus 30, so when looking at environmental justice communities, these are areas of lower income where people of color, limited English ability, 42% of total crashes occurred in environmental justice communities versus 39% of people live in environmental justice communities. 14% of crashes involved a driver under 21. People ages 15 to 24 make up 15% of the driver population and accounted for 27% of total crashes. So younger drivers are making up a larger percentage of those serious and fatal crashes. And 21% of crashes involved a driver over 65. So Nick mentioned a bit about countermeasures earlier. When we're looking at different types of countermeasures, we think about how much of a crash reduction can be expected when you implement different types of improvements. So we have this thing called a CMF, a crash modification factor. So that number shows the expected number of crashes that will exist after implementation based on a variety of studies. So if it's a 0.3, it means there would be a 70% reduction in crashes. So here you can see some different types of countermeasures that we're thinking about. These are all pedestrian countermeasures. For example, a hybrid beacon, hawk, this is where you press the button, it flashes, you can cross the street. Raised pedestrian crosswalks, this is where the pedestrians stay at the same level as the sidewalk, the drivers have to bump up. And in the rapid rectangular flashing beacon where you press the button and it flashes for you so you can cross the street. Probably seen a variety of these. You can see the crash modification factor on the bottom. So lower crash modification factor is better. That means higher improvement and reduction in crashes. These are just a variety of other countermeasures that we thought about based on different types of crashes. So you can see single vehicle crashes, some different things you can do are narrowing travel lanes. This slows drivers down. A lot of single vehicle crashes happen potentially because somebody was driving a little bit too fast for roadway conditions. Road diet, again, is try to reduce speeding by reducing the number of lanes, reducing the lane widths. You can just see we looked at a bunch of different types of countermeasures that you could implement based on the type of crash. Conflicting turning movements, you could try a four-way stop. Red light running, you can try making the yellow light last a bit longer, stuff like that. So we have more of that in the report, and you'll kind of see those when you're reading through the different types of countermeasures we're proposing for the different projects. So as part of the project, we created a dashboard. So this is online. You can see the crashes across the Berkshires. And you can toggle around and see them by community. And it's just a way to kind of get a sense of the different crashes happening across the region.
I added that in. I can switch them all.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll pull this out.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so I'll close this out here with kind of next steps, and how we sort of evaluate and report how our progress is doing on this action plan. So in the report, you can check it out. We have basically 5 steps that we're going to recommend for continuing to, work through this action plan. The first is to, assign responsibility for reaching our goals. Including forming a Vision Zero Advisory Committee, which we'll be looking into over the winter time. So if anyone's interested in helping us to reach these goals of 0 deaths and injuries, we'd love to form a citizen committee along with some practitioners and stakeholders from around the county. They'll also help us to prioritize and recommend projects from our action plan, so we can figure out which ones are most desired and feel like they're most impactful to the community. We're going to identify the key performance measures to track. Mostly that involves reaching 0 deaths and serious injuries, as well as what projects we're implementing and what strategies we're adopting. And to figure those out, we'll adopt targets and milestones over time. Our ultimate goal is to reach 0 by 2040. I know that seems very far away. But that basically tracks with how we had been seeing our progress trending before we started going in the wrong direction. So I think that kind of gives us a good a baseline that's realistic and achievable, but something we have time to work towards and to figure out as we go. And to track our progress, we'll be reporting annually as part of the grant. We'll be reporting annually on the performance of the plan. Every year we'll be talking about how many injuries and fatalities we see on Berkshire roads, if we're heading in the right direction, if not, what we think we should do to try and change course. And we can also update the plan as is needed, and as funds are available. We can always apply for a supplementary grant to look back at the plan, make changes, make additions, if we see there's more that we need to do. So that's kind of an idea of what's next. We're opening our public comment and review period until December 2nd. So basically you have from now until December 2nd to add a comment, to be included in the final plan. All comments will be listed in the plan, incorporated as best to our ability as possible. And they'll be listed publicly in the appendix. The final edits will be made and the finished plan is expected in mid-December. And our plan is to adopt it with the Berkshire MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, sometime in January or early 2025. And if adopted, the plan will be used as a guide for our future implementation grants through the SS4A. The SS4A program is funded through 2026. We'll see what happens with it after 2026. We'll see what opportunities are available to us going forward. Hopefully we'll have funds available to continue implementing our plans well into the future. And we'll of course make annual updates on our progress towards these goals of 0 fatalities and serious injuries. And we hope you'll stay involved with spreading awareness and getting involved in other education and participation opportunities. We'll keep going on those over the years, based on what we hear from people. And that's what we have for our kind of slideshow presentation. We have our project webpage. I encourage you all to check it out at BerkshireSTEPS.org. I can give a quick demo actually. I think we're doing pretty good on time, so I can show you what the website looks like. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me, Nick Russo, and russo@berkshireplanning.org. I've got a few business cards in the back as well. And yeah, thank you all so much for coming out and for your attention at this presentation. Feel free to leave comments and sticky notes on the map if you see a project that sticks out to you. If you have questions, we're going to talk about the plan, until 7. So stick around, chat if you'd like. And we hope to see you down the road and more initiatives for SS4A. So thanks everyone. Thank you for the light applause. I appreciate it.
So can I ask a question here? So I'm not quite sure who this audience is. It's sort of like, okay, you presented your nice, really beautiful with many, many colored charts and 76 pages of things like that. But who is this audience? I mean, when are you going to be asking for public comment? You mentioned there's going to be a time when public comment and you're going to be presenting your things to the people at the cities that have to implement these things. When is all that going to happen? This is apparently not that time. What is this all about?
So this action plan, the audience is anywhere from town managers, DPW supervisors, general public who is interested in traveling, either by bike, car, walking, anyone who's had an experience they want to try and correct.
2 legs, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that includes me. And I came here because I thought I could provide some feedback, but apparently this is not the time.
Well,
So
what kind?
when is that going to be the time?
Oh, I mean, you're absolutely welcome to provide feedback. Like, would you like to chat with us or
Well, I
provide?
just have one comment, the basic comment that I'd like to make is I looked over this 76-page thing last night and it certainly was very interesting. And it's interesting you covered all these different accidents and things like that, even down to like going from the top ones with dozens of accidents on Dalton Avenue to like one accident happened in some little tiny town somewhere and stuff. So it's very thorough and comprehensive. One thing I don't remember seeing anywhere is the responsibility of the pedestrians themselves to try to keep themselves safe. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I walked to work for like 14 years. And so I am well versed in being a pedestrian, and I know exactly how being a pedestrian feels and how vulnerable you are and everything else. And that's not the issue. The issue, like I was telling Anna here a little while ago, is that I noticed that there are people who walk up and down my street all the time, walking their dogs and stuff. I'd say 2/3 of the people that walk up and down streets walk on the right side. It was drilled into my head when I was a little kid, and I'm 72 years old, so this is a long time ago, that you walk on the left facing traffic to try to be less vulnerable and see what's happening. But many people don't do that. They never learned that. And another thing that I've observed is how people have somehow got into their heads that if they are in a crosswalk, they are inviolate and you cannot mess with them. And so I am protected by a shroud of super built, superhero or something. So I have seen people just step off the curb all the time and walk right out without even looking. I've seen people do that in front of me when I have the green light, and they come up the sidewalk and they just step right out in front of me because, darn it, I'm a pedestrian and you have to stop for me. I remember one time waiting for a long light to cycle to change, and I finally had my time to go, and some people came up and pedestrians crossed right in front of me. I rolled the window down and says, "You don't have the light. We're pedestrians. You have to wait for us." And so when people think that they can do whatever they want in a crosswalk and everybody has to stop for them, it's a nice concept in theory, but in reality, they're gonna get run over and killed sometimes. And I learned, I wrote a letter about this a while ago. I myself was hit in a crosswalk one time by somebody that was making a right turn on a red light, and suddenly the light changed. I started walking across the street and somebody comes around from behind me and hits me. Fortunately, she had just started coming and I ended up on the hood of her car, and it was more of a shock than anything else. But I have learned now to look over my shoulder when I'm crossing the street. I never cross the street without looking both ways, even when I have a green light, to make sure it is safe. My brother-in-law just got in Boston, just got hit by a red light runner, was taken in an ambulance to the hospital a couple weeks ago. And I don't know exactly what happened to him, but he probably didn't look both ways when he started crossing the street. You've got to take some responsibility into your own hand, and the only way I can think that can be done is to start out by having an outreach to children in schools, elementary school, telling them, walk on the left. When you cross the street, yes, the cars are supposed to stop for you, but look, to make sure it's safe to do that. There was a little kid that was hit at a crosswalk on Hubbard, what is that street? Holmes Road. A while ago, and there was a big to-do, and the city installed flashing lights and things like that. But what I understand is that vehicles had stopped both ways, and the kid says, "Okay, good, I'm gonna start walking across." Well, another car came up the right lane or whatever to pass the stopped car and hit him. So when I walk across the street and people are stopped for me, I'll get to the front of the car that stopped, and then I will look to make sure it is safe to go. Don't risk your life. That's how I got to be 72 years old, by not assuming that people are gonna stop for me. It's taken my own life in my own hands and looking to be sure when you get to a point where you are vulnerable, which is when you are in the open like that it is safe to proceed.
Yeah.
And that's just teaching the pedestrians to save their own skins, basically. So you need to do something like that. Tell the pedestrians that they also have to watch out for themselves. And so we could cut back down on some deaths by just telling people to be a little more careful about their own butts.
Yeah,
okay? That's my 2 cents.
I think you provided some great examples. And I think that would fall under the safer people part of the safe system approach. Part of that is making people aware of their responsibilities and rights depending on how they're traveling. So I think those are great ideas to incorporate into some of the activities and programs under the safer people recommendations in this plan. So this is why we're here. This is great feedback for us to take. So I appreciate you sharing those experiences, and we'll definitely note those down.
All right.
So thank you. Yeah.
Was thrown out there just for safety's sake. I think it's College Way or whatever. There's no sidewalk between Columbus Avenue and West Street.
Like that flyover that kind of goes.
People that are walking in the road, and they have to get from there to there. It's really somebody's gonna die there. As a matter of fact, I saw a fatality on one of your charts further back, and just wondered if there was a plan to put a sidewalk in for pedestrians to get from Columbus Avenue to West Street. I get basically. I don't even know the name of I think it's College Way or something,
it's those two kind of like bypasses that go over,
right.
Government Drive.
One side or the other needs a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Probably actually closer to the train track would make sense, because then you could continue on from where across the street to kind of nowhere. And
I live right near there, and so if you want to get to Big Y, say from Columbus Ave, you have to cross the street literally 3 times to stay on the correct sidewalks to get down there. So,
and there's plenty of elderly and people that need to get to Big Y or need to get from Columbus Avenue to West Street and
Yeah.
is there a plan for a sidewalk to go in there?
I know the city of Pittsfield itself is looking at how to kind of readdress that whole area as that infrastructure ages. One of those bridges is basically, it was built in the 70s. It's almost near its end of life. I think it's load rated. You can't send like a full fire truck over it or anything. So the city is looking at what to do next once those bridges reach their end of life, if they want to replace them or if they want to kind of reassess how you could get vehicles through there and pedestrians and bicycles. So
the city's separate from you guys?
yeah, so
I mean, but
we kind of
can you address that too, or?
100, yeah, absolutely. We've been collaborating closely with the city of Pittsfield on this plan for sure. So they're aware that we're developing this action plan. They've also been working on their ends to evaluate those areas on their own, but we're certainly going to work together. Let me see. So this is our dashboard. This is kind of where all this data goes, and it's interactive and you can look around. So I think this is where you were indicating, this is Government Drive.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's highlighted red.
Yeah, Government Drive is actually where you probably should have.
Yeah.
The sidewalk.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's highlighted red. We know it's a hot spot. It's in the high injury network. So this is where we would bring in, say, Pittsfield officials and talk to them and say, hey, this stretch is on our priority list for future improvements. So how can we start to collaborate and work together on, say, a grant application to either add sidewalks, or if those bridges have to come out, can we rethink about how that whole area is designed in the future? So it's on the radar. We're working with Pittsfield.
Can you go back to that, the fatality ones that you had? You had kind of a picture of that same picture with the fatalities and the injuries and that sort of thing.
Was it in the
No, click on the dashboard, click on the line.
And make sure some comments on Zoom as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you folks on Zoom. I will check out the questions that are coming up. I only got one screen I'm looking at. So you want to try and find,
So if you click on
It
the
was-
line,
I
think you also see the.
the actual information about it. And let me share that. 1 second.
Yeah, I think you said one fatality there. And
Here, let me share this with Zoom as well. So hopefully you guys can see the dashboard. So it shows that there's one fatal injury crash, one injury crash, non-serious, 3 property damage. It is inside an environmental justice community. And then all other data about the street. It's got about 1,000 average daily cars, speed limit 35. It's ranked 27th. So it's within the top 50 projects. So that means it's definitely one of the higher priorities in the plan. Is that answering what you were thinking about?
yeah, I mean, yes, that showing that there was one fatality at the end of it, I think, Gary. That red dot, that's the fatality there.
Well, these are intersections, not necessarily
okay.
one fatality.
Right.
The dot just
There was one
shows,
that showed
yeah,
where it actually kind of happened. I think it was right there.
okay. There was one at this node here last year. I think it shows.
And it's just, I mean, luckily, like he's saying, they're walking at you as you're going down that road, but they've got that much room to walk in. It's not a sidewalk. It's some more people are gonna die there.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So this data right now shows from 2018 to 2022. Those are the last 5 full years of data. So there were a couple of crashes that occurred last year that don't show up on this map, but we are aware of those fatalities that took place.
And is the blue like a lesser?
The blue
right
is
there, and there's a sidewalk there. That's where a sidewalk starts,
the sidewalk ends right there.
Yeah, right.
The blue is the risk analysis. So basically the red is historical issues and the blue is future risk.
And that's probably because there's a sidewalk right to there and then it ends, instead of.
I bet, yeah.
continuing on to.
I bet just like
You see people walking on it every day, it's somebody's gonna die there again.
Yeah, it's the quickest way to get from The neighborhood's here to Big Y and back,
Yeah,
or the bus
exactly.
station.
A
Yeah.
lot of apartment buildings here on this side and
Mm,
down to Big Y, like you said. From
Absolutely.
Columbus, Columbia Arms and all that,
Mhm.
so.
Absolutely.
Now,
Mhm.
is there a place for suggestions to be put down here or?
Yes, feel free to leave a sticky note on the map. You can leave just a general note, not on the map if you want, or
Mhm.
chat with us and we'll note things down. Yeah, this is the time and place, so.
There's also the public input tool. You can go
Yes.
online to add notes wherever you see on the map. If you have experiences, you can, it's gonna show you right now.
Yeah, good point. We have a form built in right to the website. You can leave your name and a comment and it'll come right to me and we'll incorporate those into the plan. So just Berkshire Steps or www.berkshiresteps.org. For some reason, I put the www in there, it doesn't find it. So that's there. Yeah, that's the project website for you. Has a lot of stuff on there, everything you need. So yeah, thank you for your question. So yeah, I think there were, thank you folks on Zoom for being patient. Just have the one screen I'm juggling here, so. So we got some questions, we got some comments from Kamar and Ty Farrow and William Garrity. Kamar says, in our home municipalities, what are the best bodies to advocate for adoption of the STEPS action plan? Is there certain language like Vision Zero that we should rally around and lift up? That's a great question. As I mentioned, I think it'd be great to form an advisory committee across all of Berkshire County. Of course, peaceful folks are well, I'm sure they'll be heavily involved. There's a national and statewide Vision Zero coalition. If you Google Massachusetts Vision Zero Coalition, that has a lot of resources for communities to use and advocate for reaching zero fatalities. It's been a project that's gained adoption over the past decade or so in the US, parts of Europe as well. There's examples of some communities, I think like Hoboken, New Jersey has not had a single fatality in the past 7 or 8 years. They're kind of held up as the example in the US of a town that's reached zero and stayed there for some time. And it's also been adopted in parts of Europe, especially like the Netherlands and Finland and Scandinavia. So there are resources for Vision Zero. And I think some of the best folks to advocate for that are people who walk, bike, drive, however you get around. If you have experiences that you want to, address and folks who want to help, then this is the initiative for you. And then William says, great job on the presentation. Thank you, William. I appreciate it. And he has 2 pieces of feedback. I'm now a student at MCLA, and as you may know, there was a student who was hit crossing the crosswalk between the main campus and Berkshire Towers on Church Street. I don't know the full circumstance, but the crosswalk is not great. I know that I almost got hit crossing with the car stopping feet near me. I'm assuming feet as in like a few feet within you. I believe I did look both ways, but missed the car, and the car didn't see me. The car is parked on the side of the road. The car is parked on the side of the road, creates like it's skipping the lines I scroll. A blind spot for seeing cars. The crosswalk currently used a flashing light, but I think it could greatly benefit from a hybrid beacon type system to make it a controlled crosswalk. And I see that Church Street is near some of the proposed corridor, but not Church Street where it occurred. Could it be possible to extend the corridor up Church Street to the MCLA campus? I would say based on the crashes that have occurred since the data was gathered, it would probably affect how it might extend that range a little further. Like I mentioned, this is only up until 2022 is when we have the full data. So more crashes that have taken place between then and now would change what the network looks like and add or subtract from segments over time. And that'll be part of our exercise every year is to make sure we have the latest data, and we'll update the map you just saw on the interactive tool there. We can kind of rerun the study every year to see how it looks as new crash data comes in. So I think that we can obviously add manual changes too, that we don't want to editorialize too much, but we'll see changes over time as new data comes in, and hopefully reductions in data, but it is a living changing thing for sure. And also putting on both of my hats, MCLA student and a school committee member for Pittsfield, I would love to see some more focus on ensuring the students, both students and pre-K through 12, can safely walk to school and ensure the routes they take are safe. I don't know if that was considered as part of the proposal, but I'd love to see that considered. And I would agree. I think this would be a great opportunity to educate children early on the best ways to safely walk and cross the street, especially if there aren't sidewalks. Like, as you said, facing traffic is the safer way. It may feel counterintuitive to go against the flow, but it's much better to have that heads up of what's coming towards you than not knowing what's coming up behind you, right? I was driving to Catskill, I think it was Halloween night, and it was just a completely dark country road, and there was somebody in all black walking on the side with traffic, and I'm the biggest pedestrian advocate there is, but it was certainly stressful as a driver to not know that until I was within feet of the person. Like, neither of us wants to, I'm sure, be harmed.
And the
But
thing I don't
it's tough.
understand is we're all pedestrians and drivers, so we were in both shoes, so I don't understand how when you're a pedestrian that you don't realize how difficult it can be to see somebody like that, and why they don't take more care of their own self and walk on the other side where it's safer. I don't understand what goes through people's heads, I really don't.
Yeah, it's
With a flashlight. With a flashlight.
Yeah.
Well, they could easily wear bright clothing or something else, but yeah, when you're wearing dark clothing and you're walking on the right and think, well, somebody's gonna see me, but that's not gonna help you when you're at the pearly gates and say, well, they didn't see me, I guess, it's too late then.
But he had the right of way.
But he had the right of way.
As the joke goes. Yeah, no, especially in rural areas of Berkshire County, like when an unlit road, no sidewalks, it's important everyone plays their part in staying safe, 100%. So I think some education and awareness and enforcement through the action plan are certainly viable options and things we could, get funds for to kind of keep the public consciousness alive about the best ways to stay safe on the roads.
Margie has her hand up.
Let's see. Can I get your, all right, well, Tom. All right. Margie, you're on. Can you hear me? I think if you unmute, you can speak to all of us here.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I'm wondering where Safe Routes to Schools fits into this, because I think that education of kids and walking is something they've really taken on.
Absolutely.
And I also want to say that I'm really glad somebody's paying attention to all this, because I think we have so many angry drivers, people feel entitled, and I think it's part of where we have to come together and care about each other a little more. But I think it's great that you're collecting the data, looking at it, making suggestions. It's really a very important project. So thank you.
Thanks, Marge. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just as much about sociology as it is about engineering. Like, how do we all treat each other better on the roads and educate and keep each other safe? So, yeah, Safe Routes to School, that I meant to mention that as well, is a great program that we can partner with that come to elementary schools all around Massachusetts and hold classes about how to learn how to ride a bike, learn how to walk. They do walking school buses, rolling school buses, where kids walk and bike in groups to school with a facilitator. So we'll certainly keep up those partnerships and hopefully expand them as we go on. So that's a great point. Let's see. I don't see any more chat remarks or hands raised. We're at 6:55, so I think we can close out 5 minutes early here unless anybody has any last comments. Yeah, we did great, made out the hour here. So
one other comment I have.
Yeah.
Not like the whole thing. Is that, I also noticed, all the many, and I commend you guys all for doing this, and, the many suggestions and like each of the things, you have, the other side of this thing I'm pointing at. Lists, all the things that could be done, with the crosswalks, making the road narrower, doing, it's like 15 different suggestions for practically anything. The thing that's not quantified in your whole thing is if all the things or many of the things were done in each of these places, we're probably talking $100 million or more, or $1 billion maybe or something. So obviously we're only going to be able to touch the very tip of an iceberg to get any of these things done. And especially after what happened yesterday, there may not be even money for some of these things in the future. That's something we all gotta worry about, I guess. But, you know, it's obviously rationing what is available, the resources we're gonna have, prioritizing, trying to find ways to hit the biggest things and trying to do what we can with what we've got and hope we can do more, but that's something that we all need to keep in mind for this whole thing, because, you know, it's a wonderful report, but in reality, this much of it is probably ever gonna become reality, you know, that's the sad part.
I hear you. I think Jeff had,
Yeah, I was just gonna, that's a
An
good
idea.
comment.
Yeah.
I mean, the good news out of this is once this plan gets approved, it allows, BRPC to apply for infrastructure funds. And as of now, the program, there is a substantial amount of money, but you can't apply for everything.
Right.
But, there is a lot of money for, and using this list, that's the next step.
Yeah.
So that really is the good news, there's money out there.
This enables them to say, well, now look at, this is, a study has been done, so it becomes, blessed or something.
It's very similar, if you're familiar with the Complete Streets program, MassDOT, many communities in Berkshire is a part of. You complete the prioritization plan, allows you to apply for the next step, which is
Right.
applying, very similar to that.
Yeah.
Who does the approval on?
That's USDOT.
yeah, federal highways.
Where are you in that process?
Once this gets approved.
Yeah, but what's the one, when do they vote on it, I guess?
Oh, we'll send, BRPC will send it in, just self-certification.
Yeah, basically, our governing body, the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is made up of elected officials from parts of the county. We meet monthly. The plan is to present this at an early 2025 meeting, probably January. And if the MPO adopts it, we can then send it to federal highways and say, this is our action plan for Berkshire County. It's been done and approved. And then we can reference that to then apply for funds to do these projects. Now, how we implement these, we have the top 10 there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a checklist like, okay, we do project 1, okay, we do project 2, we do project. It doesn't have to necessarily go in that order. That's why I hope
Probably the top 50, some of the ones in the top 50 are gonna get done first off.
ideally we could kind of cluster similar projects. Like if we could implement, say, rumble strips on parts of roads in Berkshire County all at once, we could kind of cluster those together. That's why I would hope with our Vision Zero committee that we can get formed that would help inform us of what the top priorities and kind of give a little feedback loop of just not just me sitting and deciding what projects to do. That wouldn't be, that wouldn't be a very, useful metric. So that's the idea. We're in the draft phase. We're still finalizing the idea, but the idea is to, once we adopt this plan, we have our kind of blueprint of the top projects and also non-tangible things like funds to do education and outreach and enforcement. Those can also be applied for funds as well. So how we do those and in what order and how much we apply for, I think that would be a transparent process over the years with a group that would help us to get there, if that makes sense.
You have a few of these stapled. Do you keep these or?
I think those are handouts. Do you guys keep them?
Nick, how do we form an advisory committee?
Well, that's a good question. The way I picture it right now is, BRPC would say host a monthly or maybe a quarterly type of meeting at our office. It could be in other places too. But I would see that as sort of a continuing role under my sort of umbrella. But I still haven't got a full concrete plan yet, but the idea is that we do some outreach, bring in folks from different parts of the county, especially the sub-regions like North, South, Central, who are interested. So in terms of full size and number of chairs, number of roles and responsibilities, I'm not there yet. But the idea is that through the BerkshireSTEPS umbrella, we would reach out and start soliciting for members for an advisory committee sometime next year, starting next year. And that's where I'm at this point. But yeah, open to suggestions. All right, over at 7:01. I think that does it. So thanks all for coming out tonight on this dark evening. Appreciate it.
Feel free to ask.
Thank you all for coming on Zoom. We'll have the recording up later this week or next week, so keep an eye.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Thanks.
I just like you with some other, I just.